Joining us now, Don McEachin. He is a candidate for Congress in the new 4th District. I'm one of his constituents, so I'm kind of excited about it. And he is currently the conciliary to the Godfather, Dick Saslaw. His official title is Senate Democratic Caucus Chair, but basically he's the Godfather's conciliary and does quite the job in the Senate for the Democrats. Senator, good to have you with us, man.
Hey, thanks for having me back. How are you?
Okay, now, June 14th, Democratic primary. Doesn't look like there's anything interesting going on the Republican side. So that'll be decided. 3 candidates right now, McEachin, Ella Ward, and Elliott Faust. And the way this district is rewritten, it's most likely going to be a Democratic pickup. So whoever wins the June 14th primary is going to be the likely congressman. So when I go up there, I could knock on your door if you get elected as one of your constituents. And I'm sure if I go up there, you would roll out the red carpet for me, right?
The blue carpet, but absolutely. It'll be an open door policy to you and all my constituents.
Open door policy. I like that. Okay, Senator, if you were in Congress now, I got to get to some of these tough issues. The massacre in Brussels, suicide bombers, a lot of people getting a little antsy that some of these types could be in the United States now or let in. We've got a variety of presidential candidates calling for moratoriums on Muslim immigrants, some all immigrants, some to have Muslim sectors monitored if there's any chatter going on. What's your position here?
You know, ISIS is to Islam what the KKK is to Christianity. And I don't see anybody calling for the monitoring of Christian neighborhoods to make sure they're not radicalized. I think what Ted Cruz and Donald Trump are doing is playing to our worst instincts. We should not be spying on American citizens, period, whether they're Muslim, Christian, or something else. There are things to do, like Secretary Clinton's talking about, like the president's talking about, to make sure that our country is secure, to raise our awareness and to fight off terrorism. But going into neighborhoods and trying to make sure that folks aren't radicalized is antithetical to who we are as Americans.
Let's keep with the monitoring. Apple iPhone, we had the massacre in San Bernardino. The Apple company doesn't want to give basically the code out to break into Apple phones, saying that this could lead to just government surveillance of everybody's text messages and things like that. How do you stand on that?
I think if there's a valid warrant that's been approved by a court of competent jurisdiction, then Apple should give up the codes.
Okay, you would be willing to take the risk that the government gets a code that would allow them basically to monitor everybody's text messages, voicemails, anything else?
No, what I am for is the rule of law, and what I mean by that is this: we have the ability for prosecutors and law enforcement to go into court and get a warrant for a specific item or a specific search. And so if the warrant is tailored to, checking on Donald McEachin's phone, then I believe that's what law enforcement is going to do, and I believe that Apple should give up the codes to do that. So
just to be clear, Senator McEachin, you would be in favor of giving the information, provided it was signed by a judge with an actual warrant and not one of these FISA court blanket warrants. Big difference.
Exactly.
Okay, big difference.
I want to be specific.
Right. You want a name on a warrant?
Yes.
All right. I'm with you on that. Let's get to normalizing relations with Cuba, lifting the trade embargo. Obama and many others saying, this is simply a product of the Cold War. Let's all move on. What say you?
I agree with the president. I think the normalization of our relations with Cuba is long overdue. They're 90 miles off our shore. They're in our hemisphere. We should not be afraid to talk to them and to, under appropriate circumstances, trade with them. Does that mean that we agree with everything that the Castro regime is doing in Cuba? Of course not. But we don't agree with what various regimes are doing all over the planet, and yet we have relationships with them. Certainly we can have a relationship with an island nation that's 90 miles from our coast.
A couple of days ago at the AIPAC meeting and in a subsequent meeting, the frontrunner for the Republican nomination, Donald Trump, outlined a very less muscular interventionist or non-intervention foreign policy, not in favor of toppling dictators, not really in favor of sending troops to police the globe. Hillary Clinton taking a much different approach. If it's a Clinton-Trump battle, Clinton's going to end up being the hawk in the race. What is your overall philosophy on getting the United States involved militarily across the Middle East specifically?
Well, I think we should only be involved militarily. And when I say militarily, I'm starting with boots on the ground,
right?
Where our interests are directly involved. I think that what George Bush did in Iraq was horrible.
Yes,
he went in, he invaded, no weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
He should have known there were no weapons of mass destruction. And now look at the mess we have. So I think we have to be very careful when we talk about regime change, and I'm not in favor of just doing that. Now, the extension of American air power and naval forces, that's a somewhat different answer. I support what the president's doing in Syria, as he's attacking ISIS in Syria and in Iraq. I think that's the appropriate use of our air power. But the putting Americans on the ground is something that I wouldn't do unless American interests are directly involved.
Directly strategic American interest, right?
Yes.
Okay, and just for the record, along with George W. Bush launching 2 wars, he also cut taxes at the same time, which led to 50% of the deficits that we have now. Just saying. Now, I want to get to, I'm not a fan of his, as my listeners know. Let's get back to this Syrian situation. We, on our show, have been in favor for some time of gaining an alliance with President Assad, saying that he is not really a strategic enemy of the United States. If you were in Congress, would you be willing to go along with a plan in Syria directed at ISIS that didn't remove Assad from power?
I would be in favor of a plan that first went after ISIS, but you have to remember that while Syria is not, and President Assad may not be a direct threat to the United States, in my judgment, he's still a direct threat to Israel. And I'm still concerned about that regime being in power so close to Israel.
Do you feel that the Israelis have been, Senator McEachin, very critical of Obama and John Kerry in this administration? If you were in Congress, what approach toward Israel would be different, or would you like to see?
I'm not here to suggest on your show that every policy that the Israeli government takes is the correct policy. But generally speaking, I want to make sure that Israel is safe. I want to make sure that Israel remains the strong democracy that she is. And I would be a supporter and friend to Israel.
Let's get to the domestic scene for a minute, if we can. Well, Guantanamo Bay now all of a sudden coming up on everybody's radar screen. The president today, through one of his administrative spokespeople, saying we need to shut this prison down, move these detainees into the United States. I think Indiana or something. Says it'll save money. Also says that ISIS is recruiting off it. Republicans going bananas over this. What say you?
At the present time, I don't see a reason to close Guantanamo Bay.
Okay, fair enough. I love salient, succinct answers. Senator, I want to get to trade. If indeed you're elected to Congress, there is a very good chance you're going to have an up or down vote on the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership Act. It cannot be amended. We gave that up when we gave Obama fast track. This is a 2,500-page living, breathing document. Many of us feel that some of these trade deals have led to the fleeing of manufacturing jobs, and it's been a hammer to the middle class and U.S. workers as we trade them out for cheap slave labor. How do you stand on it? And if it comes to your desk, you're going to have to vote up or down on it, straight up. If it was there today, how would you vote on it?
Well, from what I know today, and of course I'd want to read the 2,500-page document, I would vote against it, and here's why. Our trading partners have to share our values in order for it to be fair trade. I'm not necessarily buying what folks are selling when it comes to free trade. I want fair trade. And when I say when I say share our values, they need to share our values about wages. They need to share our values about what the workplace looks like. They need to share our values about environmental concerns. And if they're not where we are to start with, there need to be triggers and requirements that they move in that direction, so that our trading can truly be fair. And so that's why we see jobs leaving, because if you don't mind having children in a sweatshop manufacturing soccer balls, and that's in your country, then yes, you're going to be able to do it cheaper than we can do it in the United States, and those soccer balls are going to be more attractive to the consumer. So what I want to see is fair trade with trading partners who share our values, or at least willing to move in the direction of our values.
Senator, Keystone Pipeline, President Obama has stopped it. Hillary Clinton, I can't remember, she came out. I believe she's not in favor of it. She might be. I can't remember. But if you were in Congress, would you be in favor of building the Keystone Pipeline?
I would not be in favor of it. I don't think we have to worry about it right now, because oil is still relatively cheap, and
right.
To the point that the pipeline doesn't make economic sense. But look, we have got to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels. We have got to move towards an economy that deals with alternative energies like wind and solar. And things like pipelines, especially the Keystone Pipeline, only further our dependence on fossil fuels. So that's the approach and philosophy I would take.
Senator McEachin, since the TARP bailouts of 2008, I guess 2009, there is a reconsolidation of power in the United States. You've got now basically a handful of banks bigger than ever, bigger than before the TARP bailouts.
Excuse me.
Bernie Sanders has gained a lot of traction by calling for reenactment of the Glass-Steagall Act, which would basically break up these banks. So that Sanders was on my show the other day, and he said, this was kind of shocking, 3 banks control 95% of America's credit. It's just too big. If you were in Congress, would you be in favor of reenacting Glass-Steagall?
I would have to look at that carefully, but let me tell you my overall philosophy. When all this happened, John, you remember folks saying that we're not going to allow banks to be too big to fail.
Right.
And it seems like we've gotten back into that situation where we have banks that are too big to fail. We cannot allow that to continue, and I would be for policies directed in that fashion that don't allow the American people to be subject to the tyranny of a few banks.
Well, it's interesting because we remember having that debate, and the government went with the bailouts and TARP and everything else, and now these banks are bigger than ever. So they've consolidated additional power since we had policies that were designed to do the opposite. We're also getting back into easy money. We got quantitative easing. It's almost like we're heading towards a repeat of what we had, and there's not a lot of monitoring going on. So hopefully if you get to Congress, you'll be able to look into that. Congressman, we're out of time. My final question, though, is you're from Richmond. You're not well known in the southeastern part of the district, Suffolk, Chesapeake, things like that. When are we going to see you in Chesapeake area?
Well, I've been there twice. I've been there to the Democratic Women's Club, and I've been there to the Democratic Committee, and there will be more trips. Chesapeake's a beautiful part of the state, and I look forward to getting to know Chesapeake and having Chesapeake getting to know me.
All right. Well, the next time you're in the southeast part of the district, I'll have Abby send me an email and I'll show up. By the way, I want to give a shout out to your legislative aide, Abby Easter. She's absolutely fantastic to work with, very responsive, gets back to me immediately, and you're blessed with her, Don. I
am blessed with her and Jediah and the whole staff, and I hope they're listening. Thanks, John.
Yeah, Abby Easter's doing a wonderful job. What's your website?
www.McEachinforcongress.com.
McEachinforcongress.com. This is the John Fredericks Radio Network.